Hi everybody out there. I'm Tab in case we haven't met yet. So welcome to Art Journaling. Thank you for being here. We are going to go through 8 good for the soul single page art journal designs that I have come up with that will hopefully bring some kind of peace and serenity to your life in this crazy time that we are living right now. My little experiment called Art Journaling for the Soul. Thank you again for being here. I am super happy to be sharing these things with you, and I hope that you enjoy it. Hi you guys, we're gonna go ahead and do another journal page tonight, and this one is all about you know, home and how it makes you feel. This is like the time of year where we're all kind of like nestling in. We're putting on our cozy clothes all the time and you know, kind of getting comfy a lot. So I wanted to look at home as being my place of safety and where I can be myself and all that stuff. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it, you know. And home doesn't necessarily have to be your house. It can be where you're most comfortable. So it can be your church or your place of work or wherever you feel most at home, and we can kind of like be in that mindset as we're making this page. So on a blank page, you're going to want to grab your pencil, and we're going to do a quick kind of a horizon line. This is mostly going to be, I would say, the land versus very little sky. So I'm probably going to go maybe like 3 inches from the top or something like that, and I'm just going to make a quick line for the top of my hill or the land, I guess, that my little house is going to sit on. So once you have that, we're going to go ahead and grab some paint. And so I'm using acrylics, but you can also do this with watercolor. With acrylic, however, if you are using that, just remember you have to water it down quite a bit to get it to the consistency like watercolor. But if you're using watercolor, then it's kind of a no-brainer. You don't really have to do much. So I'm just going to grab a nice big brush that I can get lots of water in and take my paints. And I have black and I have blue. You can also use a purple. So I'm going to take my watercolor, or sorry, my acrylic, and I'm going to water it down until it's like watercolor, so it's really drippy. And I don't have much space to do this in, so I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that this is very watery, so if you want to protect those other pages, just make sure your wax paper is tucked in underneath your paper. And I'm going to take this nice dark color, and I'm just going to quickly kind of scribble this in here. Now I've got really dark stuff here. Super dark black, and then I have like a midnight blue that I'm going to squish underneath of it. So as it's still wet, I'm just going to squish those two colors together. And if it's watery enough, it's, you know, going to run together just like watercolor would. So I'm just going to go ahead and come down to my horizon line. And while this is still really wet and watery is when you want to get that salt in there. So don't let it dry. So it needs to be like, you don't want it to be like in puddles, but you do want it to be damp. So I'm just going to make sure that it's nice and damp. And then I'm going to get my salt. Now if you're using a big old salt container like this, just get yourself some in your hand. And actually, if you have a salt shaker, it's probably a good idea to put it in your hand as well, because we really want to sprinkle this around like pixie dust. We don't want to dump it in a big spot. We don't really want to just kind of like do a salt shaker and it all be, you know, in one spot. We want to really spread this out a little bit and let the salt do its thing. So then I let this dry, because this salt technique, it does take a few minutes, and you do have to let it naturally dry. So you have to be patient on this part. Okay, so once your watercolor or acrylic, whichever you decided to use, once it's dry, you're going to want to actually remove the salt. So just scrape all of that off and brush it to the side. And you can kind of see this texture here. It's very irregular. It's hard to control, but it does give a very unique kind of feel to the background that you just can't get in any other way. So our next step is we're going to go ahead and basically draw in where we think our little house is going to sit. So I'm gonna picture that it's, you know, kind of off center a little bit here, and off in this area here. So from there, we're gonna want to kind of draw this path kind of flowing away from our house. And you know, it's just a big S, and it's just gonna start at the base of your house, and it's just gonna kind of flow back and forth a little bit in an S shape. Now, this is not, you know, there's really no wrong answer here, but I try to get the sides here nice and long, and then the turn is really quick, and then the side is really long. So it's more of a, you know, you don't want to take too long to come down here, you know, so it's really long on the straight parts, and then the curve is just really quick. That's going to kind of hold true for the other side of this, except here's the trick. You've got to let this line kind of separate from the other line really quickly, so that it feels like it's coming out at you, or coming towards you, and you know, the house is really far away. So everything down here at the bottom should be really wide, and everything up at the house should be as thin as possible. So we kind of like pinch this together here, mimic the curve as best you can, and then, you know, you might not even see the whole side here. You might just see that part. So it's just kind of a trial and error kind of thing, and you know, it's not easy to get the perspective right on the first try. So you know, you kind of play around with what looks right, like that. Okay, so we do want this to feel like a pathway or a walkway to the house. So that's probably, let's see, it's like not the easiest thing to get perfect the first try, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm going to keep it pretty dark because it is nighttime after all. So I will add a little dark green to my plate, or you can always add black to your green, and just kind of go from dark at the top to a little bit lightened up at the bottom. So I'm just going to kind of fill this in with, I'm just painting around my little path here because I'm going to paint that a different color. Add a little bit of green here. Now remember, acrylics should not be hard to paint with, so just add a little water to them every once in a while if they start to get difficult. So we have a little path away from our house. The path itself can just be, I was just going to do a gray, so I'm just going to get a little bit of white on my plate. I need a little bit more black, like a dot. That's more than a dot. Okay, so you can use whatever brush you need to use to fit into this little space here. A round brush does just fine, so if you wanted to get your pointy brush, right? And again, we're going to do slightly darker at the top. And for this, I'm going to follow that S curve for my brush strokes. And so the cool thing about acrylic is that it will cover itself up. So if you feel like your shape isn't quite right, you can always just cover it up as you go. So I basically construct houses the same way each time. It's very simple shapes. So first, for your house, you're going to want to have a rectangle, and you can make it whatever size rectangle you want. You can make it tall and skinny, you know, really short and wide if you want. I usually make my roofs either, well, I don't hardly ever do a triangle roof, but more like a trapezoid shape. So I just kind of make it just slightly wider than my actual house so that it has the pieces that hang over. And so then I made sure to cut some little simple, you know, windows for the upstairs windows. And this is not exactly what my house looks like, but who cares? So, and then my red door. Okay, so my house is gray with a red door, and then I've got my little windows in there. So this is going to be Mod Podged on, so you're going to want to make sure that you grab your Mod Podge and your ugly brush. And this is how I know it's an ugly brush. I have the tape on the brush, and it's just plain pathetic looking. So I will go ahead and Mod Podge this on. One thing I do want to do is I want to put a moon in my background. So I'm kind of digging this pattern paper, so it has little circles on it. So I think I'm just gonna take and I'm just gonna cut around one of these little circles to use for a moon. You can also do this with just a dot of yellow paint. So this next part, and I'm just kind of making it up as I go here, but I'm going to get some yellow paint. I'm going to do a little bit of a porch light effect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have white and yellow on my plate. Okay, and so I'm going to go in with my white, and I'm just going to like kind of paint a little kind of oval shape, like it's a spotlight. Okay, so this is going to be like the spotlight that our little porch light, and this is hopefully going to work out. I'm just kind of making this up as I go. I'm going to make sure that this is dry. Okay, and now I have my white dry, and it's just going to serve as a kind of a blocker for my yellow. So now I'm going to go over that with my yellow so it'll be nice and bright. And honestly, this yellow might have covered this pretty good anyway, but we want there to be a difference. This is like almost like a spotlight. Just going to paint this in. And then I'm going to take my yellow and I'm just going to take a little bit of it to the side, and I'm going to water it down just slightly so it's a little bit transparent, not too much. And then I'm just going to connect, I'm going to be drawing a lamp up here above my door later. So I'm just going to kind of connect the corners like a little triangle here. I'm just going to fill all this in with kind of a transparent-ish yellow. Okay, so we've got kind of a see-through light, and it's hitting the ground and it's becoming more opaque. Okay, so that's why we needed that white under there. So one of the things that is really good to practice, there's my ribbon, okay, is, you know, fitting your lettering inside of a shape. So let's say that I have, you know, just like an oval shape and I want to fit a word in there. You can manipulate letters to be whatever shape you want them to be. So if I wanted to fit, you know, the word oval inside of this oval, I could make this O whatever kind of O I wanted, and I could make the V fit that oval, and then I could make my A come in and fit together with my V, and then I would make my L do whatever kind of thing it needed to do to fit inside that that oval shape. So for our journal page, inside of that oval, we're going to try to fit the word home. Okay, so we can, you know, the best thing is to do is, if you're starting with a shape like this, to start with other shapes that are similar to it first and then build around that. So I can start with my O and make sure that it kind of fits inside of that oval really well, top to bottom. And then my other letters, I can kind of like manipulate them to fit around that first roundish letter, and then I can kind of follow suit with my other, you know, letters like that. So, and it can fit in there any way that you want. So it, you know, it can be any shape. So if I had a trapezoid, I can make sure that, you know, however I'm fitting stuff in here, I can, you know, manipulate those letters to be whatever I want. So, you know, if I was trying to fit the word home in here, I could angle that H, and I could, you know, kind of fit it in a way like that. So we're going to be doing this for the spotlight, and then we're also going to be doing it along the path. So as that path gets bigger and bigger, your letters are going to stretch farther and farther. So if you have your path like this, right, you're going to be able to kind of stretch your letters. So if I'm saying that home is where I feel safe, safe and comfy, right? So I want it to feel like it's kind of coming down the path, and the home up here is why, or is what makes me feel that way, right? So that's my, I guess, concept, and that's my quick little lettering tip, or, you know, whatever. My other favorite lettering advice is to vary the thickness of your lettering. So this is all the same, you know, one marker stroke, you know, thickness. So if you were to take and just kind of fix this up by, you know, maybe a couple of these spots, like maybe the right sides of everything, like I'm just going to hit the right sides of all these letters, right? So, well, the E is a little hard because it doesn't have a right side, but if we just vary it even that much, it's going to make it way more interesting. So already it's like looking a little bit better. So it's more interesting to look at when there's a little bit of variety. So you can also do things like, I can throw little serifs, you know, on here, just little feet or little things that stick out, right? And then that just kind of dresses it up a little bit more. Okay, so if you want to do this with Sharpie, I'm probably going to do my home with Sharpie, but I'm probably going to do the path painted because I don't want it to stand out too much. So here we go.
If I could hear my father's voice, he would tell me to move on. I'll be just fine. Yeah, he would tell me we have time, time to laugh and time to heal. Our favorite song is on repeat, drinking wine until the dawn, knowing soon we'll be back home. Ooh, I'm thinking about...
There's my lettered path, and I did it in gray just so it kind of blend in a little bit, so it's not so obvious, so you kind of like at a first glance maybe don't notice it. So I want to now kind of add some accents, and I'm going to do accents in probably yellow just because I've got the moon up here, and you know what's kind of fun is we can actually kind of mimic our lamp here, and we can kind of do something similar with the moon by just kind of like having a little bit of a moon glow coming down. It's kind of cute, right? Very light. But I can take my yellow and I can kind of like let this yellow hit parts of my path and parts of my letters and just kind of bring that balance of that color into my journal page a little bit more.